It is scary. It is intimidating. A lot of times it is confusing.
I guess I really don't know what Christmas is all about.
Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I am Ashley Janelle, and today we are talking about UX design, UX careers. This is the second video in this series that I have started around UX design, and specifically for aspiring UX designers who are looking to get into the field, just looking for more information. I know how that is when you're trying to break in and you just want the information. So without further ado, let's get to it. But before we get into it, go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. I don't want you to miss anything in this series. Let's go ahead and get into it. As you all know, if you saw the previous video where I was just talking about breaking into UX, giving more of an intro overview of the career, salary, what to expect, different roles within the UX career field, I also was talking about how I asked you guys for questions. And so that's kind of how the structure of this video came about. And as you could imagine, there were a ton of questions about, should I take a boot camp? Should I be self-taught? If so, how do I do that? What are the pros and cons of both? So we're gonna talk about all of that. So again, I just wanna give a little bit of context to where I'm coming from when I talk about this topic around boot camps versus courses versus self-taught versus master's degrees, all of that kind of stuff. As you all know, if you saw the previous video, my experience is very well-rounded, and that is for a lot of different reasons. I can speak on the boot camp aspect because I'm a product of a boot camp. Boot camp is how I had my entry into UX after getting a degree in interactive arts and media. However, I also created a boot camp, and through that boot camp, I talked to a lot of students who went the master's degree route. I talked to students who went the self-taught route, and now students who ended up in the boot camp route. So I am able to give you a very well-rounded perspective and pros and cons of each method and way and entry that you can take into UX design. And ultimately, the decision is going to be yours. So I'm here to give you the information. So let's go ahead and get into it. So the first question that I always ask when I get this question of, Ashley, what should I do? Should I go self-taught route? Should I take a boot camp? Should I go back and get my master's degree? Should I take a course? What should I do? My first question, and my typically only question, is, what is your timeline? So ask yourself, what is your timeline? If you're saying, I want to transition and I want to be working as a UX designer, I want to be interviewing, okay? I want to be interviewing within the next 3 to 4 months. I want to be interviewing within the next 4 or 5 months. Then you're already kind of putting yourself in one category, right? If you're someone who's saying, I don't really know. I don't really have a timeline. I can kind of do whatever. I don't really have a sense of urgency. Then it's like, okay, then you have some other options. But I think that when we talk about transitioning and when we get serious about wanting to change your career, that is a big deal. It is scary. It is intimidating. A lot of times it is confusing because there's so many options. Oftentimes we're entering into a career field that we know nothing about. So there's just a lot of thoughts going on. So what is your timeline? Is this something that you want to do quickly? Is this something you want to do in the near future? Or is this something that is just kind of, more down the road for you? That already helps you choose and narrow down your decision for how you should go about transitioning. So I got this question from one of my followers on TikTok, and she said that she is a teacher. She said she's a teacher and she wants to switch into UX. She says that she's researched it, but she's really nervous to take the leap and leave her job of over 7 years. Should she quit her job and take a boot camp or teach herself? Everything sounds very scary. This sounds like just about every person that I talk to, every student that I talk to. This sounds very, very similar. And you probably are thinking that there's something in there that you can also relate to. Outside of what is your timeline, the other question that you really want to ask yourself is, how do I learn best? That will also help you narrow your decision down. That will either put you over here or it will put you over here. What is your timeline and how do you learn best? Those are the two best questions that you can ask yourself and be really honest about. And once you have done those things, it's kind of like one of those like choose your own adventure kind of things. You pick this and then you pick this and then it gives you your output, which is this. It's very, very simple, very, very cut and dry. So now we're gonna get into the different methods and kind of where you fit after you've answered those questions. So we're gonna start with a boot camp. We're going to talk pros and cons, and then we're going to get into self-taught route, and then we're going to talk pros and cons, and then we'll also talk about like master's degrees and other courses and things like that. So since boot camps are pretty popular and they're widely asked about, we're going to start there. So the first question that I asked was, what is your timeline? And I'm going to use this question as a starting kind of jumping off point because I think that she kind of answered the first question, which is I want to leave my job of over 7 years. Now, she didn't say I want to leave my job tomorrow or I want to leave my job in 3 months, but it does sound like I get a sense of urgency from this person. So let's just say she is someone that is like, I want to leave my job ASAP. Like, I don't want to go back in the fall, or, you know, maybe it's the spring and I don't want to go back in the fall, or it's, you know, Christmas time and she's like, okay, I want to do one more semester and then I want to be done. The first thing I asked was, what is your timeline? The beauty of a boot camp is that you have a timeline. You have a start date and you have an end date. I'll use my course as an example. It's 16 weeks. If you were to start today, you know when you are going to start and you know when you are going to finish. You know that you are going to finish within 4 months. You know that after 4 months, you are going to not only have the knowledge of a UX designer, you're going to have several projects to put in your portfolio and you're going to have a portfolio. That's the beauty of a boot camp. So if you're someone who says, okay, I want to be interviewing within 4 to 5 months, a boot camp is going to fit your timeline and is probably going to be the best option for you because it is a regimented course, hence the name boot camp. It's pretty intense because it does allow you to learn a entire, you know, syllabus of information within a short amount of time. And then from there, you're able to, you know, have different outputs. You know what your output is going to be. You're going to be able to, you know, maybe work with clients, have a portfolio, have projects, you know, this, that, and the third. You know what it is that you're going to get out and you know what it is that when it is that you are going to finish. So I'll just reiterate, you will finish your education and your portfolio a lot faster than you probably would if you went the self-taught route or if you decided to enroll in like a master's degree program or something like that. The other beauty of a boot camp is that the information will be laid out for you. Like I mentioned before, you will receive a syllabus prior to joining the class. You will receive a syllabus. You will know everything that you're going to be learning. You may not know exactly what some of those things are, but again, you will know and understand what some of those things are that you're going to be learning. So like, let's say you're taking a look at job descriptions and they say that they want you to understand and know how to prototype. Well, you make sure that when you sign up for a boot camp that they're specifically teaching you about prototyping. Or going back to what I was talking about in my previous video when I was talking about UX research and how everyone should learn how to do everything. If you're saying, well, I want to make sure that UX research is in there, you find a class that has UX research. So you do have the ability to make sure that whatever class or boot camp you take, it has the things in it that you want it to have. And you have that laid out structure for you. You don't have to go looking for the information. The information is already there for you. So now let's go back to the second question that I asked. That second question was, how do you learn best? A lot of people who choose a boot camp will choose a boot camp, yes, for the structure, yes, for the timeline, but they will also choose it because sometimes, depending on the boot camp, and I can really only speak for mine and maybe some others, but the boot camps are instructor-led. So when you think about how you learn best, you want to make sure that you are thinking about the fact that you will have someone to ask questions to if, let's say, you don't understand how to do something. You know, you do have some courses where it's just the course material and there's no instructor. That can be a boot camp. They give you the course material, and there's really no one there to course correct you, for you to ask questions to. You may have to ask questions through a portal. You may not always have access to someone. That could be frustrating. So you want to make sure that you choose a course, if this is important to you, if this is you learn, that has an instructor there working with you. In my particular course that I run, I'm the instructor, I'm the coach, and you work with me every day, Monday through Friday. And you have access to me and things like that. So when you do submit an assignment or you do have a question on something, you have someone to ask instead of trying to submit that assignment and kind of going for it and then getting to a point where someone says, okay, well, maybe this wasn't correct to begin with. And then you've kind of gone down a rabbit hole and now you're frustrated and things like that. Because a lot of these courses, especially now, are online, it's really important for you to say, okay, I'm a visual learner and I need help. Like, I know that I'm going to have questions and I know that I'm going to be frustrated if I don't have someone there to kind of like hold me accountable and to ask questions too. So making sure that you have an instructor-led course, if that's important to you, is going to be important, which I will say is probably one of the biggest things that a lot of people who decide to go the course route, the bootcamp route, need. And that's kind of why they go that route, is because they do want someone there to make sure that they are doing things correctly and someone to ask questions to. That's really, really important. I got another question. I actually got a ton of questions with people asking me, what are my thoughts on the Google UX course? And to be honest, what I will say is that, first of all, I have not taken the course. I have looked at the course. In detail. I have joined the Facebook group that they have to see what a lot of the chatter and kind of communication back and forth is about. And one of the things that I will say is that because the Google course is not instructor led, meaning that you have someone there that you can ask questions to, and you have someone that is like your person that you can go to at any point at any time, kind of like when you were going to school and you knew that you were going to see your instructor today, and that at the end of class you could ask questions, or throughout the lesson you could ask questions. Because they don't have that, that has been a huge pain point for a lot of students. And what ends up happening is you feel like you're learning all this good information, but who's checking it? Who's making sure that you're not going down a rabbit hole in the wrong direction? Because one thing about UX is it is very difficult in the beginning. It is, and the reason why it's very difficult is because it's a different way of thinking. You have to think in a way that you haven't thought before because you're thinking for someone else. And that's an entirely different video. But, UX it's a very special skill to have. And it is learned. It can be learned. But you have to have that course correction. From what I've seen, in my opinion, in my profession, you have to have that accountability. And again, making sure that you have someone at your disposal that can help you so that you're not frustrated and kind of on this hamster wheel is going to be very, very important. So that's my answer to the Google course. I'm sure that the content is fine. I'm sure that all of it is there and is accurate. But the course content is not enough to make you a successful anything. There's another element that goes, there are several other elements that go into it. There's the instructor-led piece, there is the networking piece, there is the portfolio piece, there is the how do you get a job piece. There's a ton of information or a ton of different factors that go into, number one, getting a job, but number two, making sure that you're successful when you get into that job. So that's kind of my thought on the Google course. I got a ton of questions about that, but I did want to just kind of circle back to the point that I was making about the instructor-led, which is, if that is important to you, definitely make sure that you keep that in mind. I also wanted to quickly touch on the difference between an instructor and a mentor. These can be the same people, but oftentimes, depending on the course, your instructor is not going to be your mentor. So let me kind of break down the difference between the two. An instructor, depending on the course or depending on the situation, your instructor is someone who teaches you. So your instructor is someone who is there for you to ask questions to about the course. A mentor is someone who can help you in career development. Yes, they can help you, look over your portfolio and look over your work, and they can poke holes in it and ask you questions and things like that. But a mentor is actually going to stay with you after the course is over. A mentor is actually going to make sure that once you're interviewing for those jobs, you're getting the money that is owed to you, and you're not underselling yourself and just saying yes to anything. An instructor and a mentor are two different things, and in my opinion, you need to have both for those particular reasons. In my course, I am the instructor and I call myself a coach. So you have me for the the duration of the course, but you also have me after. I make sure that my students get, like I said, the money that is owed to them. We talk negotiations with all of the jobs that they get. I look over their portfolios after the fact. They still have access to me even after that. That is really, really important. You know, it's like having a great instructor and in college, but then you really don't have access to them after the fact. It's kind of the same thing. Like, you need to make sure that you, in whatever situation you go into, whether you're self-taught or whether you go the course route, you really want to make sure that you find a mentor if mentors are not offered to you, and then also know that mentors and instructors are not the same thing. The other really nice piece to a course or a boot camp, I'll say, because boot camps typically run in cohorts, which means that you're in a group. The nice thing about that is that you have a network going in. Everyone's all in the same boat. Everyone's has the same goal. Everyone's excited. You guys go through the same emotions together. Some days things are exciting. Some days things are difficult. Some days you feel like, okay, is this really the right decision? And then the next day you're like, oh, I figured out how to do it. This is how. Or you have another student who's also taking the class that's like, you know, I figured this out. Let me show you how I did it. Or, oh, I had a really good, maybe coffee chat with someone at X company. You should talk to them. This is what they were saying about hiring, or this is how they said UX works at this company. Those kinds of relationships that you build are going to be really, 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 really important. Even if it's just for the point of like getting through the class. You know, having someone to just text with or talk to or just kind of bounce ideas off with, someone that is going through the course just as you are, and maybe they're also working a full-time job, or maybe they're also a parent, or, you know, whatever it is. There are all these things that we can use when we're going through something. That would be nice to have someone else who like knows exactly what it is that we're going through and is going through it with you. That's a huge plus. So the networking aspect is something that we can't dismiss. So now I want to get into some of the reasons why people don't choose boot camps, because yes, there are some really great, amazing parts of boot camps, but then there are also some areas that might deter students. So the first thing is obviously going to be the price. A lot of times boot camps are pricey. Because of all of those things that I mentioned. Boot camps, you know, you get the syllabus laid out for you. You get the instructor. Sometimes you, like myself, you get an instructor and a mentor. Because you get the networking, because you get someone that is there for you and with you Monday through Friday or whatever the hours are until you finish. There is a price tag that is often attached to that, and it varies depending on the course that you take, but boot camps can be pricey. So that is something that often deters some students. One thing that I will say though is that UX is just as the design thinking process, which is what you will learn in UX, which is essentially the process of how we solve problems. It is tried and true. It is tested. It works. It's one of those things where it's like, if you do this, A plus B will equal C, right? Like if you do these things, you will get this outcome. And that's how we solve problems. And it's like, it almost always works. The same is true for boot camps. If you put in the work, and you learn and you put yourself out there and you do the work and you're enthusiastic and you go the extra mile by, you know, like I said, reaching out to people for those coffee chats and networking and doing things that may be outside of the class. If you do all of that, you will get a job. Like, you will be successful. You will be confident. You will have a portfolio and a body of work that you are passionate about and that you can speak to. And we'll talk about passion and how that just goes into interviewing. But you will have what you need to succeed. So the way that I look at it, the way that I had to look at it when I was choosing a boot camp for myself was, it is an investment that is going to pay off. And it is something that when you get your job will pay off. If you're looking at it like, well, I'm making $60,000 right now at my current job, or I'm making $50,000 at my current job, but this UX role, we talked in the previous video about salary, I'm going to be making over $100,000. I can pay for this boot camp. I can, I will get that money back. And you have to know that. And that has to be, sometimes we need that motivation in us. Like, no one wants to take out loans. Like, we get it. Like, trust me, as someone who I get it. But sometimes we need that motivation to say, you know what? No, I'm going to do this. I'm going to finish this boot camp again in X amount of weeks. I'm going to be looking for a job. I have researched. I have done my research. I understand, the process of UX and getting into it and what it is that I need to do. I, will get my education. I will, work on my projects. I will have my portfolio. I will interview. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to network. I'm going to do all of these things, and I'm going to get my job, and this boot camp will pay for itself. And a lot of times it will pay for itself 2 times, possibly 3 times over. That's how we really have to start looking at these things, because there will be so many things that will stand in the way of us going for what it is that we want to go for. It will be time, and we'll get into time in just a second. It will be time. How do I find the time to, to teach myself or to take this boot camp? Like, there will be so many excuses. I want to go to brunch with my friends, but I have, homework to do. Like, there will be so many excuses. If you buckle down and say, listen, I'm taking this class, I'm paying for this class, and this is what I'm committed to do, you will do it and you will reap the benefits financially. You will. The other area that I see students typically struggle in when it comes to boot camps is staying the course. Pun or no pun. Obviously, like I mentioned, with the boot camp, there is a start date and there is an end date. They give you the material. Obviously, they go through it with you, things of that nature. But one of the areas where I see students start to struggle is they haven't fully committed to the class. So one of the things that I want to say is that before you commit to anything, whether it's being self-taught or whether it's, taking a class or whether it's taking maybe a master's degree class or higher education or whatever, make sure that you know that you are carving out the time to do it. Let's say that you work a full-time job and you want to take a boot camp. Make sure that your boot camp is suited for people who also work full-time jobs. Yes, there are boot camps that are full-time, which means that you are dedicating 9 to 5 to that boot camp. There are also boot camps that are more part-time, where the understanding is that, okay, from 6 to 9, maybe every day or every other day or whatever it is, you're going to be focused on that course. It may take you a little longer, but it is what works for you because you don't want to quit your full-time job and things like that. So make sure that you are fully committed and you have said, okay, for this amount of time that I am in this course, I won't be available, friends, for dinner. I won't be available to, on the weekends like I was. My schedule is different. I have to commit to this class that will be over at some point. But right now, I have to commit to this class. I have to. And that is where you really have to get serious with yourself and you have to be disciplined and you have to understand that this boot camp is literally a blip in time. Like I said, I'll use my boot camp for example. It's 4 months. It's 16 weeks. That is literally a blip in time. And yes, there were times, like I said, that I wanted to go to brunch when I was in my boot camp. Now I'm going back. That I wanted to go to brunch, that I wanted to go out, that I didn't feel like going to Starbucks to, on the weekends to, get work done. Or I didn't feel like working after work or, whatever it was. I didn't feel like it. But I had to do it because it was something that I was committed to. So I wanted to do it. But just because you want to do something, like, let's be honest, just because we want to do a lot of things, it doesn't mean that they're fun, or it doesn't mean when they actually come up that we're excited to do them. So yes, there will be those moments of like, oh, I really don't want to do this, but you have to commit and stay the course. And that is where I've seen some students in various boot camps start to fall behind because they haven't fully mentally committed to the fact that this is what I'm doing for the next X amount of months. And honestly, once that boot camp is over, yes, you might have a little bit more free time, but you still are refining your portfolio. You still are, networking. You're looking for jobs. You're going on interviews. You're still working. So even after, you're still in that mind. You still should be in that mindset. But starting up that course, a lot of times that is one thing that I see, an area that I start to see students start to fall behind because they haven't fully committed mentally. So make sure that you fully commit before you actually jump into one of these boot camps. So now we're going to get into the self-taught route. So we're going to go back to those first two questions that I originally asked, which is what is your timeline and how do you learn best? So typically when I talk to a lot of aspiring UX designers and they say that they're going the self-taught route, one of the reasons is because they're not necessarily in a hurry. They're like, yeah, I want to transition, but I'm not in a hurry to transition. I kind of want to take my time. Take my time, and then I'll dig and I'll say, well, how long is, how long do you expect to kind of be on this journey? And they'll say, well, I don't really mind if I'm on this journey for the next 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 months. That's kind of the timeline that you might be looking at when you're talking about self-taught. And honestly, it may be a little longer than that. And here's why. One of the things about being self-taught, and this can be a pro or a con depending on who you are, is that you are sourcing the information yourself. So remember when I said, when you go to a boot camp or a course or a master's degree program or something like that, your syllabus is given to you. You get the outline. You don't know what the course material is, but you get the outline. But you'll get your textbook, or you'll get, your videos, or you'll get your instructor who has his slides and all that stuff. All that's done for you. When you are self-taught, you are finding that information on your own on the internet. So not only are you having to learn that information, but you also are spending time finding that information. Now, for you, if you're someone who is not on a tight timeline, if you are working a full-time job and you're like, after work or on the weekends, I'm going to spend time finding this information and then from there teaching myself and then from there working on the projects, that might be a route that you might be interested in going down because you're open to spending that time finding that information yourself. And a lot of people find reward in finding that information themselves, and they feel like as they are looking for that information, they're also learning. So that's one of the pros for a lot of people, is that they're not tied to a timeline and that they can find the information themselves. Obviously, another positive about going the self-taught route is that you're not spending your money on something like a master's degree or a boot camp or anything like that. That money stays with you and you're able to spend that on, other things, whatever it is that you would like to spend that money on, but you are saving that money as well. So we can't ignore that. The other aspect about going the self-taught route, and I talked about this a little bit with the boot camp route, but it's even more so with the self-taught route, is that you have the ability to find your own mentor. So you're not tied to the mentor list or portal that, maybe your course gives you, or however that's set up, for maybe like another course or a master's degree program or something like that. You have the option of finding your own mentor, somebody that you want to mentor you. So you kind of have autonomy over the trajectory of your career because you're working with someone who you actually, hopefully, that you like. Whereas, sometimes in a boot camp or in a course, those instructors or mentors are chosen for you. So again, I would still, like I said, even if you are in a boot camp, I would still make sure that you have a mentor, and hopefully that's someone that you can choose, or someone that they offer that you just really like, right? And that makes it easier. You don't have to find someone, but you should be finding someone that you like. I just want to underscore that any route that you take, whether you go boot camp, master's degree, self-taught, the outcome is still the same. So you still have to have your portfolio, and obviously you still have to learn. You still have to have the UX knowledge in order to, solve problems and apply for jobs. So doesn't matter how you get there, you just have to get there, because once you apply for those jobs, they're going to ask you for a series of information, your resume, your portfolio, obviously to interview. And then obviously once you get into the interviews, they're going to ask you a series of questions that really test your knowledge, how you solve for problems and things like that. And the only way to answer those questions is to talk by experience. So doesn't matter how you get there, you just got to get there. And I will say another con about going the self-taught route is the personal satisfaction of having done it yourself. So a lot of people who find themselves going the self-taught route find a lot of personal satisfaction, especially when they get into the interviews, of talking about having taught themselves. Yes, it may have taken them a little longer, but they're able to talk through how they were able to solve these problems, and not even just solve these problems, but how they were able to learn the information to then solve these problems. So if you're a person who thrives off of like personal satisfaction, teaching yourself how to do anything technical, how to code, how to do, how to become a UX designer, there's a ton of personal satisfaction rolled into that. So now let's get into a few of the areas that kind of deter people from going the self-taught route. You can probably think of a few just based off of some of the things that I've already said, but one of those things is learning in isolation. So like I mentioned before, with the boot camp, you have the ability to have other students there with you oftentimes, even if it's virtual. Learning in isolation for a lot of people can be demotivating. Sometimes just knowing, like I said, that you have someone else that's going through it with you, and going through the same problem, the same course, and you guys can really ask each other questions that are specific to what it is that you're working on, can be really uplifting and motivating, especially in those times where, you're kind of feeling a little low, or like you're, kind of feeling at a standstill, which we all feel when we're learning a new skill. So the ability to not have someone to kind of ask questions to about what it is that you're working on, and them kind of going through the same thing, sometimes is a deterrent for people. The other area is limited access to feedback. So like I mentioned, finding a mentor, no matter what route you go, is really important. But just because you find a mentor doesn't mean that your mentor is going to be, unless you're paying them, unless it's someone that you have like on a retainer, finding a mentor does not mean that they're going to be available for you whenever you need them. When I think of mentors, I think of someone maybe that you check in with maybe a couple times a month. Not necessarily somebody that you talk to every day, or several times a week, just as you would with with an instructor that's leading a boot camp, or maybe a master's degree program or something like that. So when you're feeling like you're at a standstill, you have someone who, number one, knows the course material, knows the problems that you're trying to solve, and can help you right then and there, and that you have access to every day, so that you're not feeling stuck, and feeling stuck is not discouraging you or holding you back from moving forward in the project and making progress and things like that. So limited access to feedback is a big one. So now let's get into one of the other questions that I was asked, which kind of snowballs nicely into courses, the difference between courses and boot camps and like master's degree programs. And that question is, there are so many tools for online learning for software engineers. Is there anything comparable when it comes to UX? And the answer is yes. So one of the other ways to go about learning UX is our courses. So what's the difference between like a course and a boot camp? So the way that I like to think about it is, a boot camp, again, is a structured set of like requirements and like a structured syllabus that takes you from A to Z. Where a course will maybe give you a part of a section of that syllabus. So like, let's take UX research, for example. So UX research is a huge topic that we cover in my course, and we cover it for several weeks. A course might be something that will be boiled down into maybe a day of those several weeks, if that makes sense. So it might be learning how to ask questions. That could be a course. or learning how to talk to users. That could be a course. Or writing a research report. That could be a course. But there's smaller courses that relate to the overall topic, if that makes sense. So in a way, it's kind of similar to the self-taught route. It's like, to me, it sits in the middle of the self-taught route and the bootcamp route, because you're not necessarily doing it on your own. You do have someone giving you the information, but at the same time, you have to take those courses and kind of put them all together in order to get the full picture. And typically a lot of those courses, because they're individual, they're not leading to something, if that makes any sense. So I'll give you an example. Typically in a boot camp, let's say you'll learn like a set of skills from like UX research, UX strategy, UI, and then you'll put all those skills together and you'll work on that for one project. So you'll learn all these things and then you'll put all of those things towards a project. Versus a smaller course is like, okay, let's learn how to talk to users. And you might do an exercise that just focuses on talking to users. But it doesn't really boil up into something that is tangible, that is like fully tangible. Like, yes, learning how to talk to users and doing an activity on that is great. But how are these outputs being streamlined in a way that I can present fully in my portfolio? So it really does sit in the middle of like the bootcamp route and the self-taught route, because there's still a lot of gaps that you have to fill in order to make what it is that your output from those courses to be able to put into your portfolio. So, but those courses are oftentimes good for like filler. Like, let's say you learned about something and you want more information on it. It's good to take like maybe like a smaller course and hear maybe someone else explain it, or maybe if you want to get a different perspective, or maybe you want to get more information on it. That's a really good way to go, is to like take one of those one-off courses. They also typically tend to be like pretty inexpensive. But the thing that you also want to pay attention to is the fact that making sure that you're not spending a ton of money on just like a bunch of courses, when maybe you could have put that towards like a boot camp or something like that. But they do have their pros and cons, and I think that was a really good question. So the last question is it worth it getting your master's degree when you're already in the industry? So I'm going to break this question apart and ask it in a different way. Is it worth it getting your master's degree to enter into the field? And then the second part is it worth it getting your master's degree when you want to like level up if you're already in the industry? So the first question, is it worth it to get your master's degree when you are trying to get into the field? Let's take the scenario that I started out with. We have a teacher. She's been teaching for 7 years. Is it worth it for her to take to get a master's degree to become a UX designer? Across the board, I would say it is not needed to get a master's degree in order to become a UX designer. It's just not. A lot of these technical careers, unless you're going for like a director role, like right off the bat, which you probably won't be doing because that's not how it works when it comes to like levels and things like that. You kind of start at entry level and you kind of work your way up. Everyone gets their experience by working their way up and going from entry level to junior to mid-level to senior to, manager, director, principal designer, whatever it is, and you work your way up that way. So a lot of times what I realize is that a lot of people want a master's or want to entertain the idea of getting a master's degree just to say that they have a master's degree. And there's nothing wrong with that. If that's what you want to do, I have nothing to say about that. But if you feel that for some reason that master's degree is going to make you more marketable, or you feel like that master's degree is going to allow you to get more money, most of the time the answer is going to be no. Because what happens is you go into these interviews and what they want to see is that you know how to do the work. You can solve problems. You're somebody who is able to explain your work, and you want to make sure that you have the experience to do that. However you get that experience, the experience is what you need. So again, if we go back to the question that I asked earlier, which was, what is your timeline and how do you learn best? Well, if you're saying that I'm entertaining a master's degree because I am someone who learns better in the classroom with an instructor, okay, that's fair, that's valid. But if a master's degree is going to take you 2 years, do you want to spend 2 years learning UX and waiting to transition? If the answer is no, then you might want to take a look at some of the options that we previously discussed. So is it necessary to get into the field? Absolutely not. There are a ton of other ways that we just talked about that you can make that transition. Second question, for someone who's already in the industry, is it a good idea to get a master's degree if you want to move up? To be honest, no. Again, one of the reasons why we think that we should is because sometimes we'll take a look at job descriptions and they'll say, need a master's degree in psychology or need a master's degree in human-centered interaction and things like that. But honestly, what they want to see is that you know how to do the work. And if they're going to disqualify you for not having a master's degree, but you have all of this experience, you've worked at all of these different types of companies, you are this well-rounded individual, this knowledge, this walking, book of knowledge when it comes to UX, how to manage people, how to manage projects, how to manage different groups. Like, that's what it comes down to. So are master's degrees worth it? Not really. They want to make sure that you know how to do the work. That is going to wrap up today's video. I hope I gave you a lot of information that is really helpful to you, things to think about, those two very important questions that I always say. What is your timeline and how do you learn best? Really think about those things and really be honest with yourself and allow that to be your guiding light when it comes to, should I take a course? Should I, go the self-taught route? What's the difference between the two? Am I interested in getting a master's degree? Am I more interested in taking, kind of one-off courses? There's so many different options, and I hope you really have a lot to think about. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments. I will be happy to answer them, and I will see you guys in the next video.